Hello, perfect timing queen.
Hello, darling.
Hello. So, hi.
Hi.
How you showing up today?
Oh my God, I've had so much fun today.
You went to basketball.
I did. It's my new dating strategy. I've decided to try to find a new man at a basketball game, apparently. So I went to a basketball game today and I ran into, so here's the thing. So I'm sitting there with my girlfriend who is 35 and is also shopping for a man and or a relationship or whatever. We're both pretty open. But she said, there's two handsome men over your left shoulder. Take a look. And I turned to look, and it was one of my husband's best friends and his son. And I felt a little bit of shame in that moment. Like, wait, like, you know, I'm gonna judge myself for shopping for a man, and then I run into this person who was one of my husband's best friends. But it's just, opening up to a different place.
Mm-hmm.
I can't with these old white men. I can't.
No.
Oh,
especially in Ohio. I mean, if you had the interest and the resources to go to Vermont, you might find a different kind of white man.
Vermont, maybe.
I mean, that's the most liberal place I could think of.
I'm gonna read you this message that I got today, and I'm gonna tell you right up front that I feel bad about myself for reading it to you and laughing about it, but I can't not.
Are we allowed to broadcast this since you feel bad about it?
Sure.
Okay.
Because we're recording already.
So the guy's name is Plumper for me.
Plumper for me? That's his.
Plumper. Plumper for me. And he said, "You are very lovely. I would love to take you to dinner next Friday night. To be truthful, I would need you to drive. I had brain surgery in January and I'm not cleared to drive yet. Call me." I have not had a conversation with this person. I have not been in contact in any way with this person. This is dating in the 60s. It's what it's like.
Oh my! So he's just soliciting you for rides to dinner.
Yeah, right. And he doesn't live in Columbus. He lives 40 miles from here.
Oh my God! So the level of entitlement. Sorry to disappoint you.
I can't.
At least he let you vet him right away.
Well, there's that.
You didn't have to worry about talking to him. You're just like, oh, okay, no, thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Oh my
but
God.
it is that, and I appreciate the vulnerability. I appreciate all of that. And no. That's kind of one of the beauties of online dating, I think. It's like, nope.
One of those basketball games.
So anyway, let's move on to actually introducing this show. Welcome to AstroDivaz with Peterbilt and Stone. I'm Nikki Stone.
And I'm Mitzi Peterbilt. And before we get into introducing our guests, we want to let you know that we are going to be talking today about some serious topics. We're going to talk about death and dying and suicide as part of the creative process. So we want to let you know that up front in case you need to practice discernment around listening to this episode. If you're up for it, stay tuned. We have an incredible guest, a good friend of mine, Karen Austin. She's a grief practitioner and an author. And welcome, Karen. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Karen.
So I was not, I didn't choose to be a grief practitioner. It's a thing that showed up in my life. And I said, okay, I'll take this on. And grief has been one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. So just a little bit about me. So I lost my mom when I was 15. So we're talking 1973. Let's go back to like, a long time ago. Lost my mom in 1973. She had an aneurysm, was like here on Friday, gone the following Friday. She was married to a guy who killed his wife and two of his kids. That's an entirely different story. We should talk about that sometime. And then my brother died by suicide in 1979. And, I've lost all the grandparents, all the aunts and uncles. I'm the oldest living female in my family. I've been divorced twice, and I lost my husband to cancer in 2017. So grief is like, it showed up early, and it was like, hey, you can learn something here. And I didn't learn from it when I was young, but I'm learning from it now, and I'm teaching people about the beauty and gifts available in it. I often say that there are gifts in grief, and there's magic in mourning, and we think grief and mourning are the same thing. They're not. They're different. So grief is this internal thing. So someone you love dies, or you lose your job. We feel grief from all kinds of incidents, circumstances in our lives. And I often talk about grief as any ending that causes pain. So something ended, it caused you pain. So you have all these internal feelings. And it's, I often say when my husband died, I felt like I was walking around with my skin on inside out, and everything I bumped into was a salt lick. It's just this feeling that maybe it can't possibly hurt worse than this. And so that's yours, right? Like, that's what you feel. Mourning is grief gone public. It's the outward expression of that. We collectively are taught not to express our grief, not to express our pain. So it's my personal belief that we are a collective in pain. We're a collective in grief because we're not expressing it. So one of the things that I've learned is to express my grief, move my grief. It's an active process. It's a thing that we're designed to do. Our bodies are designed to grieve. When we lose something, when we have that intense level of pain, there are chemicals in the body designed to buffer that for us. And that's part of the grieving process. But if you don't mourn, it sits right here. I think of like unexpressed grief as it goes down the basement and lifts weights. It's down there going, I'm gonna come back up later when she can least handle it. Let me just, I see my basement as like my suicidal brother is laying on the couch, smoking a cigarette, drinking some vodka, maybe huffing some paint, because that's what you did in the 70s. And he's just down there waiting for me to acknowledge him and express the stuff that I haven't learned from his death. So for me, grief has been this amazing gift, and mourning has been a practice. I mourn every day.
If you're willing to speak into it, what are some of your mourning practices?
I honor my grief. So when my husband was dying, Lee, you knew Tracy. Tracy chose to use his cancer. He had pancreatic cancer, and we knew that he was not going to. He had a 5% chance of making it. We knew that he was not going to live through it, and he chose to use his cancer for giving. Like, I came home from the pharmacy one day, and he was laying on his bed, on our bed, and he's got like this singing bowl that a friend of ours brought from Sedona, and he's laying there with my son's stuffed dog, and he's got a mantra playing. And I walk in our bedroom, and he's like laying there. He wasn't in his body. And he kept saying, yes, I will. Yes, I will. So I waited until he came back, and I said, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? He said, my creator. I'm going to use my cancer for giving. So we took that whole 9 months of when he was dying to share his grief publicly, to share his death publicly. And I shared my shit and he shared his, and it became a lovely thing that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people were involved in. So I'm getting to the answer to your question, I promise. Because we shared that publicly, it's in my memories every day. It's in my memories on social. So, for example, this last weekend was the 5-year anniversary of his first chemo. And his first chemo was the worst experience of my life. He was so sick, I didn't know a human could be that sick and still be alive. And so I got to be present for that and to watch that. And the blessing was he didn't remember it. But every year that memory comes up. And every year I have a new learning from it. And this year, my learning was we don't give enough credit to caregivers. We don't give them enough love. We don't give them enough care. And we don't appreciate their trauma. There's deep trauma in watching someone you love die and being present for it. And we don't give any credit to that. So that was my message. So that was my way of honoring my grief on that day. And it could be something different every single day. Usually is something different every single day. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, we tend to hear the word practice and we think that it needs to be something orchestrated and organized, and grief doesn't work like that. It just shows up. Like you said, it's working out in the basement and it's getting stronger and it's going to show up when you least expect it, and showing up to the practice with presence and awareness and honoring it in a morning practice. It sounds like that's what you do.
I do. And
when it's there, it's there, and you don't hide from it.
No, and it's some days it's not there at all. Mm-hmm. And other days it is. And some days it knocks me on my ass. And I am willing to be knocked on my ass because it has something to teach me. Because it's a practice, because I'm willing to just go, okay, what do you got today? That I can learn something from it and teach someone else something.
Your story speaks so deeply to me because I have quite not as intense, thankfully, but a very similar situation where I'd have everybody who's contributed to my genetic information is deceased. And that happened between the ages of 16 and 30. So there's that 12-year span of my life where I can't do that math, 6. Well, 5. One of them had passed before I was born. All 5 of my grandparents and parents had all passed. And it is exactly as you're describing it. There are days where it's like, it's not even in my mind. And I'm just going to move on and do what I need to do and get my day done. And there are other days where like I try to pay attention to the dates because I know those are triggering for me. Like the dates of the deaths, the dates of the birthdays, the holidays are all triggering. But sometimes I'm not paying attention. And it just, oh, that's why I had a shitty day today. It was the anniversary of my mom's death. And I'm a little not upset isn't the right word, but I'm a little, like envious of other people who got to experience that through you first, because I figured that out on my own too, where it's just, I learned that grief's going to come and it's going to interrupt my day and it can knock me on my ass, and that's fine. And I've just been very open and honest about it with people. Like, I work in education, and my students, not every class, but a lot of classes know that about me, because I'll come in on one of those days where it's just that grief is hitting me. And so I just am openly transparent. Like, this is what happened, this is what's going down. And it can be kind of awkward from my standpoint. I always get the, oh, I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
So sorry that happened. Like, and I, with my Gemini side, can make it very mental and very cerebral and say, oh, I lost my dad. I can't even do the math right now. 16 years ago, 18 years ago. Um, so it's not a big deal anymore. Like, it affects me. There are days when it happens, and there are days when I, have a deep emotional thing, but I've done a lot of processing and a lot of learning. And on top of that, there's more processing and more learning to do.
Yes. And I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry you lost all your people so in such a short period of time. And I'm happy you lost all your people in such a short period of time. I mean, it's it is what it is, and it is all about what you take from it, what you learn from it.
Yeah.
I wonder though, like I pay really close attention to the dates because I don't want to be sidelined, because your body knows, like your body remembers. I've never quite understood that. My mom's been dead for, I don't know, I can't do the math either. She died in 1979. It's a lot of years. And if I'm not paying attention to the dates, I'll notice, as you said, like something's off today. What's off today? And it's my grief living in the basement saying, hey, we're on the stairs. What are you doing? We're going to come up. It's like that. Yeah. I am still changing my relationship with my mom. Like, nobody ever talks about this, but death ends a life. It doesn't end a relationship. So my relationship with my brother just has a suicide in the middle. There's a very good possibility that at some point during this call, the light behind me is going to start blinking, and that'll be my brother. Like, we still have this relationship that is growing and changing, even though he's been gone since 1979. I still have a relationship with my husband. My relationship with my mom has gotten so much deeper in the last 4 or 5 years that I never expected to see that change. I was kind of disconnected from her, and I am more and more connected to her all the time. So part of grief work is also soul work and ancestor work. And the beauty of learning that you can, I'm just going to go off somewhere here. So you can change your ancestral history today. Like, you can stop ancestral patterns today if you choose to. That's what I'm learning about grief and ancestry. And
it's interesting that you bring that up, because I was actually going to ask you this specific question. How do we brought you here to talk about grief as a part of the creative process. And I feel like that's what you're starting to speak into. How do we create with grief?
How do we create with grief? Oh my gosh. Grief can turn you into a completely different person. That's its job. Like, grief shows up and goes, hey, I have something to teach you. Are you willing to learn it? And most of us go, no, that's going to hurt. I don't want to learn that. And it's understandable. We live in a culture that says, sorry, so sorry you lost your mom. Here's 3 days off for the funeral. Come on back. Are you over it yet? And that is not what happens. I mean, when you lose someone who is so close to you. You lose a mirror, you lose your identity, you lose 100 different things. I could name 100 different things that change when you lose someone close to you. So your choice is create with it or don't. Most people don't. Most people say, let me just hurry up and get through this so that I don't have to feel this anymore. And the beauty of feeling what you feel is that the layers and the layers and the layers and the layers bring you more of you. And it's a you that you didn't even know existed until that death happened or until that loss happened, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Like, so as an example, my husband died, Tracy died in June of 2017. We recorded his funeral. It was the best funeral ever. I'm a huge proponent of funerals. Lee was there. Lee, weren't you like the point person for Tracy's mom? Like you were her person to like if she needed water, you got water for her.
No, I was your point person, actually.
You were my point person?
I was your point person.
What an amazing funeral.
I had all the things in. I had the chapstick. I had the whatever you needed. I had and mints, all the things, mints, lots of mints.
I don't remember Xanax. I don't think you had any of that.
They didn't give me that because I might have enjoyed it.
I might have as well. But so we had this amazing funeral, and it was a co-creation of really hundreds of people.
It was a piece of theater.
It was 90 minutes long. Tracy had all these different groups that he interacted with, and they had all met each other online during this sharing of his death. So we had like 15 different speakers. His mom opened, I closed. We had a brass band at the end, like a third line that took him out. And as I said, we recorded it. Well, somebody gave me the recording a year or so into Tracy's death. Excuse me. And I couldn't open the thumb drive. Like the thing where you push on it to open the thumb drive to get to the USB would not open. I've had it in my desk for years. I couldn't open it. So 7 or 8 months ago, I was walking on my daily walk, and I had this epiphany, I had a download. And the download was, it's time to write this book. I'm an author. It's time to write this book about Tracy and watch the funeral. So I came home from that walk, and I opened my desk drawer, and I took out the thumb drive. It's probably right here in this drawer. And I took it out of the drawer, and I pushed on it, and it opened. And I watched it. And I watched myself speak at the end. And I was like, who is that woman? I did not know her. I know I was her, but I am not that person that spoke at that funeral 4.5 years ago. I am a completely different human being than I was then, because I chose to be. That woman, I was examining her. That woman would still be in the Lazy Boy watching some Hallmark movies at the holidays. That was not who I chose to be. And I think that we have this avoidance to death that completely shuts off our willingness to learn from it. Mm-hmm. People came up to me in the you know, the line, the visitation line the night before the funeral. And they would tap me on the hip or tap me on the shoulder and say, don't make any decisions. Don't change anything right now. And I'm thinking, I'm changing everything. Like you know, I get it. It makes sense. Like, don't spend a bunch of money. Don't sell your house. Don't go on a cruise. Don't, you know, get a boy toy, whatever. But we have this aversion to death to just pretend like any of us are getting out of here alive. And what I've learned from it is that I can create whoever I want to be, and death is the best teacher I've ever had. It is like the yin and the yang of life. Yeah, we're here. Yeah, we're alive. And yeah, we're going to die. So why don't we use what we know in life to inform our death? And why don't we use what we know from death to inform our life? And why not be joyful that we're here and also joyful that we can feel pain?
And I'd like to backtrack a little bit with a specific question, but also kind of move into another thing that we discussed at the same time. So, you work with people who are in their grieving process, and you just described a bit ago how you experience that your relationship with the people that you've lost hasn't stopped. And I can say for myself, I experienced that the same way. It didn't matter which person I had lost. If I had some kind of deep relationship with them, I feel like that continues to go on. And I see in other people that they have a difficult time with that they don't have an easy time connecting with somebody, or they don't feel somebody's presence, et cetera, whatever your version of continuing the relationship is. So fully, my question is, do you experience people changing that for themselves? If they have a hard time having a relationship, can they create one or recreate from that space of like not being able to and being stuck and, you know, feeling alone and without that person anymore?
Yes. So what you're asking me is, do I see people create that?
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. So a couple different stories. I have a real close girlfriend who lost her mom. Her mom was an alcoholic who, when she was a young child, would, like, you know, it was 5 o'clock was drinking time. Here's the bag of chips, sit down in front of the TV. So that was their relationship. And my girlfriend was in her 50s when she changed her relationship with her mom. And it was because she intended to, because she said, I don't want to be mad at my mom anymore. I don't want to have this disconnection. I don't want to resent her. So she made that choice. So I do see that happen. I work with people who have lost someone to suicide. I do support groups for suicide loss survivors. And I often hear from them, you know, I'm starting to forget her voice. I'm starting to be afraid that I will forget her. And one of the things that I'll say to them is, you know, if you're open, she won't let you forget her. And I don't mean that from a standpoint of, you know, this spirit is going to come to you and make you remember, but it's the willingness to be present to the grief, and the willingness to be present to the loss, and the willingness to be present to the relationship that keeps people alive in the world. I'm thinking of one couple specifically who lost their daughter, and she died by suicide. And the world keeps showing up, the universe keeps showing up to bring her to them. Friends send pictures. The mom is making decisions about how to take suicide work into the world. So when you ask me, Nikki, about do I see people doing that? Yeah. And it is more often than not from people who are doing the work, who are intentionally saying, I'm gonna take this grief and I'm gonna use it. Because it is an active process. Does that answer your question?
It definitely does. Thank you. It's great to hear that that sounds like it's starting to shift, because I know that even in my lifetime, there's been a big paradigm shift in how we deal with death and grief and loss as a society, and how people want it to be more accepted and more spoken about, where it used to be almost even shameful to bring it back up, to to dwell, so to speak, on somebody's loss. So
you would be shamed for feeling your grief, for wanting to. I mean, that still happens. You know, come on, get over it. Don't dwell on it. That's still a thing.
Because
But
it's
you're
making me
paradigm.
uncomfortable, and I don't want to be uncomfortable.
Exactly.
I'm wondering if it comes from a space. We're trained societally to seek relief rather than to feel and heal, because it, that drives that, and for lack of a better word, it drives capitalism. Don't grieve, shop, or consume, and that in itself is a different kind of an addiction, and avoidance is a chemical addiction also.
We do a thing quite often in suicide group where we don't hand people tissues, because when you hand someone a tissue, what you're really saying is, please stop crying. It makes me uncomfortable. It's not about the person that you're handing the tissue to. And I get pushback from that all the time. But we are, as you said, we are trained to not feel our feelings. Because shit, what would happen if we felt our feelings? We might be authentic, and we might create something that didn't send us to Target.
Oh my God. Got it running scared.
I feel like a lot of that shame comes with judgment, and then we kind of internalize that. So can you speak more into that?
Yeah. So what are the multitudes of things that you feel when you're grieving? Like, I have often felt like, so when I shared everything publicly, I would have people say to me, when you share, it makes me hurt. Okay. What are you feeling? This is not on me. Like, I'm going to share how I feel. And if it makes you hurt, I'm going to be like, yes, let's talk about that. Whereas most people are like, no, I can't feel it. I can't feel it. It's going to kill me if I feel it. It hurts too much. The multitudes of things we feel, and we judge them all. Like, we waste more energy judging what we feel than we spend time healing and feeling. The shame, the stigma, the whatever is coming up for you, that has been with you since you were a child because somebody told you to stop crying, or, shake it off. That's the stuff that creates the multitudes of things that we judge. And if you don't judge them, you don't have to play with them. Just go, hey, I see you. Bye. I don't need you today.
And it can be that simple. That shame is I notice shame coming up a lot when I'm in my process. And 9 times out of 10, what is under that is grief.
Mhm.
Grief of the end of something, grief of an old identity, grief of whatever it is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a death. And the avoidance of that grief is shame, is such a go-to. It's so easy to do that. And when we can just expand and let go and include the grief underneath the shame, it sounds like it. I've heard you say this before, that, when we're in this state of elation and when we're in deep grief, it feels the same.
I had an experience where I was driving home from somewhere, and it was early in the morning, and I was on a highway, and the sun came up and it hit this building next to me. And I had been in some healing work the couple of weeks before that. I had been, and this is what we talked about, how your body knows. I had been having this feeling of unease come up for a couple of weeks. And what I realized was that, so it was what was coming up for me was I had almost died several years before that, around this same time. I had an experience that almost killed me. And I still had some stuff to heal around there. And so I'm driving down this highway in Ohio, and I'm driving past this mosque. If anybody knows Toledo, there's this mosque at the juncture of the highways. And the light hit the mosque, and it was one of those perfect moments that you'll never forget. We all have them sometimes. And I realized in that moment, holy shit, like, there's only one emotion. That emotion is love. And everything else is how many ticks we are away from the center. So Lee, when you say that, love and grief and joy, it's all the same emotion. And you can be in both at the same time. That is maybe my greatest learning from grief, is that I can be just deeply in the basement, sad, and also in extreme blissful joy at the same time. And it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
It absolutely is. And we've had a conversation, and I shared with you, a brand new decision has been made to relocate and put the house that we have shared during this pandemic. We've grown so much together as a family, and this was our compound when we were on lockdown, and we didn't feel like we needed to go anywhere else. And it's just time for a change, and we all are in agreement with that. We talked about it for a while, and then when the decision was real, when we all spoke it into being and we were all aligned to it, it immediately felt like relief. And then it hit the basement. And then the grieving started. And there was simultaneous relief and joy and excitement and exhilaration for the next adventure, and grieving and shame. Why am I grieving a house? It's a picture. There are memories, of course, those memories never go away. And all of that floods in the instant. And just the gift of being open to letting all of that move through. And I was cleaning, and the cleaning for the holidays as I ordinarily would, but now it has a different intention. Now I'm getting the house ready for market, and I'm noticing these things come up, and it's like this grief ritual to like give the house a goodbye, each corner at a time. And it was just such a wonderful way to start the process.
And what a beautiful description of the multitudes of things that you feel and judge. And it sounds like you felt them, judged them, and let them go immediately. Yeah. That's what we don't know. That's what nobody teaches us, that we can do that in the moment. It doesn't have to drag us down. It doesn't have to keep us in the fucking basement forever, because there's so much fun and joy in feeling it in the moment.
It's true. It really is. And, you know, I was doing some really hard work, and ordinarily that would have, you know, I would have felt that. It's a little, you know, little in the hip and but letting the emotion move through, I felt good the whole time in my being, because if, you know, you feel it, you heal it, and it doesn't get stuck in the body.
But baby, I am grieving that house. Like, I would come down there today just so I could see the house again before you guys move. Of course you're grieving your house.
Oh, God, it's gorgeous. What was I gonna say? I lost it. Anyway.
Well, I interrupted you because that's what I did.
It's all right.
What's coming up for me is that similarity between joy and grief is that they're both a release. That you get to release that dis-ease and release that holding yourself from love. And they both are rooted in, like you said, that singular emotion of love. And the release is what brings you there. So it's the crying, it's the laughing. So, and this is like scientifically also like crying and laughing create the same kind of chemical reaction in your body, because they're both releasing so that you can allow whatever that base emotion is, which again, you would say it's love.
It is. It's love.
I remember what I was going to say. Imagine how much more available and empathetic and connected we could be in the actual deathing experience if we approached all of our transitions with presence and grief. You know, if we weren't afraid to grieve something as simple as picking up and moving house, that would open us up and expand us to more coherence and availability for those around us and those that we're losing.
Even just grieving something as simple as breaking your shoe.
Yeah. You know, I think that is the beauty of being a grief practitioner, is that the grief happens daily and it happens in the moment. You know, whether you're having your knees replaced, you grieve your knees. You get a new car, you grieve your old car. You grieve fall when winter shows up. Like, it's just a practice of feeling the emotion, acknowledging the emotion, moving the emotion. Some of the emotions are bigger than others. It's all emotion. Emotions are messengers. They're there to teach you. They're there to tell us something. And we're trained to ignore them. I don't.
I think it's changing. I think this new generation coming in, I was having a conversation with Jennifer Sconiers. I hope to have her on here with us. And we're talking about the younger generation who, you know, they, since preschool, they had active shooter drills. They take Kevlar backpacks to school with them, and they've grown up with the impending inevitability of death as a reality. And there's a lot of trauma under that. Children are traumatized right now. And the older kids, the high school kids, they're not having it. They're not having it. They're, you know, the high school kids getting ready to go into college right now are, feel your shit, heal your shit. We're sick of this. We're done. And we're not doing it like this anymore. And I feel like more and more and more of that generation is liberating the ancestors after them, because of this willingness to look at that darkness, to look at that shadow, and to look at the inevitability of death. What a gift.
What a gift. None of us are getting out of here alive.
None.
And we're all pretending like we are.
Well, it's fun. I mean, that is
Sure.
that is part of the creative process, is to pretend like you're not going to die and do something with it.
Hmm.
But you can do it with awareness and presence and still do it anyway.
Well, and you can do
Because
it with
that's human nature. We're going to do
yeah,
that.
but with the knowledge that, yeah, I'm going to die.
Mhm.
So why not make today just as much fucking fun as I can possibly make it?
Thank you. Nikki, you don't have access to your birth time, Karen. And one of the things that we like to do is look at someone's chart. And I know, Nikki, that you've probably been looking as the conversation has been going, and maybe there's some fine tuning that's coming up for you. You want to speak into that a little bit and make some guesses?
Um, well,
Or
you're sold that Karen's a Scorpio ascendant, and I'm not so sold as you are. I think that's just you wanting to share a Neptune rising with her.
oh, okay.
I don't know what any of that means, but
Is
okay.
that so? She has Neptune rising. Is that where the resonance is?
Her Neptune is also in Scorpio, just like yours.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But she was born, a little bit before you, so she has Pluto in Leo. So there are some things that do make sense where you place that. But what's really striking for me is how you talk so much about communication and so much about how you were communicating that death process. And you even just brought up the word communication earlier. And your Venus is in Gemini along with your sun. I'm sure you're aware that you are a Gemini. Um, and your, what is it? Mercury is right on your south node in Taurus. So those really, in my mind, pull in that communication aspect. Gemini is all about communication and communicating relationally through Venus and communicating with your heart through Venus. It really makes sense to me that you've, not necessarily been drawn to, but been that space has been placed on you where you felt the need and the desire to communicate these deeper emotions to other people.
Yeah, it really has become my jam to change the way we talk about death and grief and mourning. For sure. Like if I do that for the rest of my life, I'll be happy to just have different conversations about it.
Yeah. The one thing I can also say about your chart, because we don't have a birth time, there is a possibility that if you were born early in the morning, that your moon was in Cancer, or it could have been in Leo. And again, I'm not sure if Lee wants it to be in Leo or if it's actually in Cancer. But you and Lee also share, Mitzi, you and Mitzi also share a Cancer Mars. And Mitzi loves talking on and on about that. So I'm sure she can talk a little bit about that. And maybe can relate that back to you as well, too.
I like to describe that as hold still, I'm trying to nurture you.
I totally get that.
But I mean, I think really bringing this conversation back around to what we were originally talking about with it. I see a lot of things that you are describing in your chart, but I'm not sold on being concerned on where your rising sign is. Like, because it's just that one little moon sign, and astrology is not an exact science. So even if your MC is in Leo with your moon, like I could also say the same thing about either your Venus or your Mercury being on your MC, where you're putting that out to the world. And that's part of what makes rectifying charts difficult. And I'm not experienced at it at all. But it's also what makes all like the house systems and everything, like it's good that we have those things to work with. But at the end of the day, it's whatever feels best. And if you're not that into astrology, then that's okay.
Would you say what MC is?
Yeah.
Maybe some people
Median coli is the point in the sky that's the highest in the sky. and it shifts throughout the day, and the signs go through it throughout the day. So like the ascendant, the median coli, the IC, which I don't remember what the I stands for, and the descendant all kind of shift a little bit as the Earth's spinning, but the signs rotate through them throughout the day. So if you were born in the morning, like very, very early in the morning, your ascendant would have been closer to Taurus, Gemini, Aries, putting your IC more along the lines of, where would that be? Like Aquarius, Pisces, Capricorn. And your ascendant's more like your body and the way you project yourself out to the world, or the MC is more like how other people see you and the career that you create. And Lee is very sold that you guys have the same ascendant. You're both Scorpio rising. And I think, Mitzi, is your MC in Leo as well?
My MC is in Leo.
So I think you just want to be the same, personally. But you could interpret it and it would still work.
And, you know, this is the beautiful thing about having geometric representation of your soul in front of you. You could talk about it all day long, and an experienced person could look at that and say, yeah. But here you are living your life, living your passion, and doing your purpose as an easy, natural evolution of what you're given. What could be better?
Would you say it was easy or natural for you, Karen?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Like I would say that it's been easy and natural for me to move into whatever shows up. And I'm never going to know my birth time. So there's that. It doesn't really matter. But it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I really pick up on that too. If it doesn't matter to you, I don't need it to matter to me either.
We had a conversation with one of our guests last week about people get really uptight about the exactness about this feeble little attempt to explain the unexplainable through the geometry of the stars. And they want to, like, I think that, you know, bringing it back around to avoiding what's inevitably going to happen, that somehow this knowledge and awareness of this astrological information will absolve us of the pain of grief and death. You know, that if we get to know ourselves so much, we'll somehow transcend and just float off into the abyss without the actual deathing process.
And what's the point in being in a body?
What's the point in being a body? You know, if gravity exists, go dance. Grief exists. Go
How
cry.
many times have I said that, you know, we come here to be in bodies so that we can feel the sand under our feet, the coffee, taste the coffee that we drink in the morning, and then we spend our whole damn lives trying not to feel anything. It's kind of pointless.
Aren't we? Well, contrast isn't going anywhere either. Like,
well, no, it's not, and it's
deluding ourselves is fun. It really is fun.
It really is. But grief is just a part of life. That's all it is. It's no different than any other emotion. It's actually the same as all the other emotions and no different than all the other emotions. And is such an incredible teacher if we allow it to be. Like, I would not choose to lose all the people I've lost. Actually, that's not true. I would choose it again.
What happened in that moment when what did you notice when you reset around that?
When I reset that? Well, you know, Tracy and I believe that we chose his cancer before we got here. and that we asked each other when he was dying, would we choose it again? Would we choose it again? Would we choose it again? And we said yes, and it got harder and harder and harder. But I can sit here right now and say that, like, I have lost all these people, and I would choose the learning from that over and over again. I mean, they went when they were supposed to go.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'd choose it again. And I would probably choose to learn about it earlier than I did. If I were to, had a magic wand to come back and do it again, I would learn that stuff earlier so I didn't have to learn it in my 60s.
That's what I've learned about Neptune rising is it's often the case that we're late starters, that that the light comes on finally in later in life, because we've gone through life with sort of this, I describe it as a cellophane filter that you just can't see clearly, and at some point, and usually it's through some shock, that we get, like, that gets ripped off, and once that happens, then there's an identity to grieve also. Like, we've been holding that up with some construct, some identity construct. We can label it, by our job or our family or however that is, and that when that gets interrupted and that identity can no longer hold back the tide of what's true, what that, of actual feeling, of actual seeing who we really are, then we do something about it. And we reinvent ourselves. And it's common for people with Neptune rising to have that circumstance.
So what came up for me as you were talking about that is, like, the level of pain that's available in emotional pain is every bit as debilitating and severe as physical pain. And we don't talk about that. We don't acknowledge that. I've had body parts ripped out. I've had both of my knees replaced. I know what that feels like. Grief feels just as debilitating, just as visceral and, agonizing as physical pain. There's no pill for it. I took a bunch of opioids when my knees were ripped out. There was no opioid for me in grief. Mourning is the opioid. Mourning is the healing. And if we could learn to do it together instead of judging each other for it, then we'd all be healthier human beings who acknowledge the fact that emotional pain is every bit as debilitating and devastating as physical pain. Yeah.
So beautiful.
It's my job, man.
Are you currently engaging a bit? You're doing your support group. Are you currently engaging the public in any way around this conversation of grief? Do you have any programs running, or
I am
if
going to
people
put
want to reach out to you?
together, yeah, I'm putting together some grief workshops for 2022. I'm still planning those. But if you follow me on Facebook, I have a lot of names on Facebook. I'm Karen Bolander Mitchell Austin. You can follow all of my writing there, and I write about grief there a lot. And whatever's coming up for me will be there until Facebook's not there anymore, and I'll have to find someplace else to do it.
Something will come in.
Yeah, right. I also have, so I'm working on Tracy's book about my husband's using his cancer for giving. So nametagsfortracy.com is live. You can go there. And I'm KarenAustin.com is also up and in the world, and I'm working on that right now, and we'll be announcing grief workshops there also.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks for having me and talking.
Of
You know,
course.
I'm online dating, and I find that if someone says, "What do you do for fun?" and I say grief support groups, it really cuts out the people who are willing to talk to me.
Unsolicited grief pics. Oh my
Back to
goodness.
that vetting process again.
Yeah. Authenticity
Exactly.
has a way of sort of doing that. Like,
So much fun.
thank you for being with us. You're
Of
a
course.
gift in
Thank
my
you.
life. I love you so much.
I love you.
Thank you, Karen.
Can't wait to see what you guys create. It's beautiful stuff.
Thanks.
Thank
I
you.
love it. What a beautiful conversation. I'm so dropped into my heart. I'm so glad that you can be here for this. Thank you for staying with us through this, what tends to be an uncomfortable conversation.
If you want to experience some of your own depth, you can find our work at activateyouraccess.thinkific.com. You can start an access acknowledgement program. It's only $369. And you can also join us for a Diva Dive, where we will really dig into your creative process with you.
And if you want to play with some irreverence, find us on Instagram at Peterbilt and Stone, also on TikTok.
We really appreciate you stopping by with us today.
We love you so much. Keep it light and do the work.